Shut up and sit down.
MVP Picks, your home for mixed martial arts news and betting advice.
Hello, welcome. This is episode 5 of the MVP Picks podcast. I'm your host, Mike Picklick. Going to be recapping all the fights that went down this weekend. A lot of events. We had Invicta FC on Axis on Friday, also Bellator 259. And then there was UFC Fight Night Font versus Garbrandt on Saturday. Going to be recapping those and talking about what's next for some of the fighters. Also, that went down. A couple fight announcements. Unfortunately, there's no UFC or Bellator this week, but there is ONE FC. The odds aren't out for that event yet, so we'll save that for Friday. And we're going to be doing maybe looking into some future bets for some future UFC cards. The next one is UFC Fight Night. That goes down next week. That is Augusto Sakai versus Jairzinho Rosenstruck. And then we'll also look into some bets for the UFC 263 card. So, let's get right into it.
It's now time for your mixed martial arts news update.
Alright, so before we recap all the events, a couple things in MMA news. Paul Felder announced his retirement on the UFC Fight Night broadcast this past Saturday. Lightweight contender said that he doesn't have a desire to fight for many more years or to become the champion. And he kind of added too that he didn't see the title in his near future. He has suffered, if I'm not mistaken, 2 losses in a row. They gave him some time on the broadcast, of course, say how much fighting means to him and, how he doesn't really want to be holding up the division anymore. Like, that's just not his thing. And he says, like, a lot of guys seem to not know when to quit. Mentioned Cowboy, dropped his name in there. But, he's lost 2 in a row. One to Dan Hooker in UFC New Zealand back in February of 2020. And then just recently when he took a fight on short notice against Rafael Dos Anjos in his return to the weight class. Paul Felder was ranked as high as number 6 in the world at one point and is now stepping away from the sport. 36 years old. He had a good career. I've always enjoyed watching Paul Felder, to be honest. He always brought everything when he came into the octagon, and just a warrior. Every fight he's got in, like I've seen him get into, like it's 5-round wars always, or 3-round wars, just back and forth. So hats off to him. He's doing his thing on the broadcast table. Not much more to say. Good for him. Had a great career, and at least he knew when to get out. So that makes it all the better. Pretty big fight for UFC 264. Kevin Lee, after taking a massive hiatus from the sport, is now fighting at welterweight and is going to be matched up against Sean Brady, who is the number 14th ranked welterweight in the weight class. I mean, that is no easy fight to come back to, especially after some time off. Kevin Lee just recently lost to the lightweight champion, Charles Oliveira, but he is the champ right now, so nothing to hold his head down on. Just before that fight, he was coming off of a great knockout of the undefeated at the time, Gregor Gillespie. First round head kick. Kevin Lee, of course, hasn't fought since March 14th, 2020, since his loss, and he's coming back to welterweight. Welterweight, I don't know. He hasn't really had the best career at welterweight. He made his debut against Rafael Dos Anjos, and it did not turn out well for him. He was submitted in the 4th round. I mean, he looked good at welterweight. He definitely looked good. I don't know. We'll see. Sean Brady is no joke, though. That is for sure. He's 14-0, and he's coming off of a submission win over Jake Matthews in the 3rd round. I mean, yeah, 4 14 in a row. Like, this guy's no joke. I don't really know much about him, to be honest. I've seen him, like, I saw his last fight, but other than that, I feel like he's relatively new in the UFC. Yeah, so October 18th, 2019, beat Court McGee by unanimous decision, beat Ismail Nardiev in February 29, 2020, and beat Christian Aguilera by submission. And then, yeah, just recently Jake Math. Yeah, this guy's no joke. This is a big test for him, though. Kevin Lee is also. He's a savvy veteran. He's been in there with some of the best. Edson Barboza, Tony Ferguson, Charles Oliveira. This is going to be a very interesting fight. And we'll see. We'll see if maybe Kevin Lee can really make a run at welterweight. All right, let's recap some Bellator. Just going to go over some of the highlights. Leah Court defeated Janie Harding via triangle choke. Now, Leah Court missed weight by a couple pounds, had to submit, I think, 30% of her purse to Janae Harding. And you never know with fights like that if the fighter who missed weight has a little bit of an advantage. Maybe they weigh a little bit more, maybe they're a little bit stronger, but they usually tend to fatigue. And just recently, I think I was watching Joe Rogan and Boss Rutten, legendary MMA fighter, former UFC champion, former Pancrase champion, said that if you lose to a guy that has missed weight, that's no excuse. You lost the fight. So shout out to Leah McCourt. Definitely cannot be missing weight, though, if you want to be, getting a shot against Chris Cyborg, right? You got to be making statements in the cage and out the cage. And by out the cage, I mean making weight and doing your job. So hopefully Leah McCourt can get that all figured out. But otherwise, it was a very good win. Davion Franklin defeated Tyler King. Davion Franklin is, of course, a ranked light heavyweight in Bellator rankings. And this fight was, Tyler King, I don't know who made that fight or where they got this guy. He's on an 8-fight losing streak. I don't know. That's Bellator being Bellator. I know it's kind of the business and you got to build up fighters. Davion, I think, only had like 3 fights under his belt, but poor Tyler King. He didn't really look like he wanted to be in there. He paid for it with a first round knockout. Aviv Ghazali submitted Sean Felton in the very first round. This Aviv Ghazali guy is a phenom. Every time I see him in the cage, he's always getting a submission. In fact, all of his wins come by way of submission. He's 6-0. Bellator's got a great lightweight on their hands. That's for sure. He is a very, very talented guy. Has a little fire to him too. Very feisty. Young too. He's only 20. Really, really looks promising. Samuku Inabi TKO'd Christina Katsiskis in the 3rd round. Yeah, Samuko completely outclassed her. It was very one-sided. Grant Neal defeated Tyree Fortune. Got a submission in the 1st round. Sunk in a rear naked choke, and that was just made quick work of Tyree Fortune. And then Sada Wad, one of the guys we picked for our MVP power picks, defeated Nate Andrews via KO in the 1st round and just completely outstruck him, just dominated him. And he was an underdog too, so it was a great value win. Let's go into the main card. I feel like the preliminary card kind of outdid the main card, to be honest. So Hannah Guy defeated Valerie Loretta via unanimous decision. A lot of hype around Valerie Loretta. Hannah Guy was a massive, massive underdog, and Valerie did not look that good. Hannah Guy, 26 years old, I think just had the experience over Valerie, who's only 22. But she'll learn from this. Like, again, she's young in her career. Like, when you're fighting at 22, you're gonna be getting a couple losses on your record. Don't expect to be perfect. You're kind of going in there raw, and especially a company like Bellator, like, there's high competition there, so nothing to be ashamed of. She'll come back from it. Otherwise, the supposed fight of the night, Austin Vandervoort versus Fabian Edwards, ultimately was a snooze fest, in my opinion. Vandervoort just lied on top of Fabian, and it wasn't until the end where he started elbowing Fabian Edwards, but Edwards actually nailed him with a great elbow on the bottom that split open Vandervoort's head. It was a nasty cut, and Other than that, I thought Fabian was piecing him up on the feet. I don't think Vanderpoor's getting a title shot after that. That was snooze fest to say the least. And then co-main event wasn't too exciting, but Leandro Higo did win. He was another MVP power pick over Darian Caldwell. It was a split decision. Chris Cyborg defeated Leslie Smith in the 5th round with only 9 seconds left, knocked her out, and it was a very one-sided affair. Nothing really too exciting happened in the fight. It was just kind of a beatdown on Leslie Smith. Respect to her though, she's not a featherweight, she's a bantamweight, and she went up the weight class just to kind of, I guess, prove to herself that she can hang with Cyborg. Up until that last little bit, she was hanging in there, but ultimately, Chris Cyborg just beat the brakes off her. To be honest, I think it's criminal that the UFC didn't do a Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes too. That just, I don't know. That made no sense. It's criminal. Should have made a second fight, even though it was a first round knockout. Should have made a second fight. Let's go to the Invicta card. It was kind of hard to watch because Bellator was on and I didn't really pay too much attention to it, but I feel like the response on social media was positive, and just from what the bits and parts I was watching, it looked like it was a pretty good card. There was only one finish on the card, and that was the first fight of the main card. Elise Pone defeated Chrissy Yandoli via strikes in the second round. But yeah, 2 title fights. And in the co-main, Alicia Zapatella defeated Jessica Del Boni via split decision. And then main event, Katrina Rodriguez defeated Diana Torquato via unanimous decision. Katrina is now the flyweight champion, and then Alicia Zapatella was defending her atomweight title. So hopefully I can catch one of those events on a night where there's no Bellator or UFC, because it's kind of hard to pay attention to the two. Okay, let's get into UFC Fight Night, Font versus Garbrandt. Again, I thought the preliminary card was awesome. I thought it was a little bit better than the main card. So first submission was David Duvark over Juan Camilo Ronderos. He managed to sink in a 1-arm rear naked choke. It was very nasty. He's now 3-0 in the UFC. The Czech Republican fighter. Kind of reminds me of his fellow countryman in Yuri Prochazka. Just brings the fight every time. Second finish came from Brazilian flyweight Bruno Silva, who scored a first-round knockout over Victor Rodriguez. Silva was 1-2 in his last 3 fights and had a really good knockout. The thing is with flyweights is that you don't really see these first-round finishes. That's why it was really impressive to see like these two guys pull off just, exciting performances. The third finish of the night, last fight on the preliminary card, was Ben Rothwell, who welcomed UFC newcomer Chris Barnett. Chris Barnett, kind of an internet sensation in the MMA community, fought in ONE FC. He's short and stocky, but just has really good taekwondo kicks, and just a tough dude, and he brought the fight to Ben Rothwell. There's no doubt. It was a brawl. He really reminds me of Roy Nelson just a lot. Just same build, same kind of punch, but like Chris Barnett's of course a little bit more athletic, and really brought the fight to Ben. And Rothwell ended up submitting him though in I think it was the second round. And then the only finish on the main card was the co-main event where Carla Esparza dominated Yan Xian and finished her in the second round. Carla just utilized her wrestling and just completely ground and pounded her and ended up getting the TKO. All right, let's get into what's next for some of these fighters.
You're listening to the MVP Picks podcast. Here's what's next.
I can only really do this with UFC because Bellator hasn't really been consistent with their rankings. They don't really have an official rankings on their website, and all the other rankings are super outdated, so can't really do any matchups if you don't know the official rankings. But UFC is very consistent with their rankings, so how about we do them? Okay, let's start with the main event. listen, I haven't really commented on it, but it was a masterful performance by Rob Font. Just took the former champion in Cody Garbrandt to school. All 5 rounds, completely just outstruck him. There was some concern with the takedown early on in the fight, but other than that, it was all said and done. It did not look good for Cody come the second round. It was not looking good. Rob Font, I mean, the only fight that makes sense for him is a title eliminator, and I thought he can do an interim fight with Peter Yan, but I'm thinking they're gonna do the winner of TJ Dillashaw and Corey Sandhagen fight Rob Font, and the winner of that fight is probably going to fight for the interim belt against Peter Yan. So Rob Font is really there's no going back now. Rob Font has cemented himself as one of the top bantamweights in the world, and he's one fight away to a title shot. So as for Cody Garbrandt, I think he should take a step back in competition. Now, I don't think he should fight an unranked opponent. I think he should fight someone lower in the rankings, like in the bottom, like from 10 to 15. And some names that come to mind: Jimmy Rivera, Cody Stamann, both guys coming off of losses. Jimmy Rivera, a veteran in the UFC cage, has had over 20 fights. Cody Stamann, kind of a newcomer, but still trying to prove that he's, capable and worthy of being in the top 15. And, I bet you those two guys would love to fight Cody Garbrandt. But, he shouldn't rush in right away. He did get beat up. I think he should take some time off, but definitely take a step back in competition. As for Carla Esparza, I think it's title shot or don't fight. Honestly, that's the only thing that makes sense. She's riding a 5-fight win streak. I mean, completely dominated the number 3 ranked Yan Xian. Yan was 11-0-1 in her last 12, and Carla just completely destroyed her. And who knows? I think she could listen. I think Carla would definitely be the underdog in that fight against Rose, but man, that is a bad matchup for Rose. I think Carla's on another level right now. I think she wants to be champion again, having lost her belt to Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the girl that Rose took the belt from. I don't know. I think strawweight is just so interesting right now, and that is the most stacked weight class out of all the women's division. Lastly, starting off the main card, it was Jack Hermansson, number 7 ranked, and number 10 ranked Edmen Shahbazyan. Hermansson ended up getting the unanimous decision win. That makes it 2 losses in a row for Shahbazyan now. Again, he's 23 years old. I think first off, for Shahbazyan, he should fight an unranked guy. That 2 in a row kind of worries me a little bit. He's super, super young. I feel like he was rushed into the spotlight after his win over Brad Tavares. He's got to take some lower competition. If anything, maybe a Kevin Holland, only because both the guys are on 2-fight losing streaks and they're young. So that would maybe be interesting rankings wise, but otherwise I think he should be fighting an unranked guy. As for Hermansson, it was a great win. He needed it. He recently lost to the current title challenger in Marvin Vettori. Marvin just completely out-wrestled him. Beat him in his own game in the grappling department. And I think Hermansson really needed to prove that he wants to be in the top 10 still. And what better way to do that than to take out a really hungry young lion in Shahbazyan. So I think there's not really a lot of fights for him right now. I don't think he should fight Robert Whittaker. I think Robert Whittaker should fight for the belt next. He, of course, isn't scheduled. He's coming off of a great win over Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum lost to Jack Hermansson, so I think that fight doesn't make sense. And then he was originally scheduled to fight Till instead of Marvin Vettori that night, but Vettori obviously stepped in and won. But now Till is matched up with number 5 ranked Derek Brunson, so it kind of leaves Hermanson in like just in limbo. Like he doesn't have anyone to fight. So what I said, and I wrote it in an article, you can find it on mvppicks.myportfolio.com/articles, where I write daily articles. I said that he should fight the winner of the Uriah Hall versus Sean Strickland fight that's going down in UFC 265. I think he should fight the winner of that. He shouldn't be rushed back into the top 5 right away. I think he should build himself up, get his confidence back, really work at his craft, get better, and then fight one of those guys. And then maybe if he gets the win after that fight, then he can think about getting into the top 5 and then maybe a title shot, because he was very close before. All right, so that was what's next. Let's do a MVP Power Picks recap and then go over some future bets.
It's now time for your MVP Power Picks recap.
All right, so first event that we bet on was Bellator. Ended up going 2-1 on the night. Both underdog wins. Sadawad was plus 260 and Leandro Higo plus 260. Cashed both of those in. Fabian Edwards, however, did not cash in, and I went over that. Kind of a boring fight. Austin Vanderford pretty much just lied on top of Fabian and kind of just rode out the win. And what can you do? Stuff like that's going to happen. However, UFC, I'm extremely disappointed in myself. I totally went opposite to what I said on the podcast on last Friday. I originally had Rob Font. I went with Cody. Bad decision. Jack Hermanson, though, did cash. Chris Barnett was kind of just I thought he could do something. But then Felicia Spencer, that one really surprised me. She just got completely dismantled that night against Norma Dumont. Very surprising. Otherwise, I will do better in the next coming weeks. Trust me. I'm gonna make the graphics the day of I make the decisions on Friday. I kind of made the mistake doing that on Saturday, kind of the day of. So my mistake. Bad weekend on UFC, but we'll get it back. Otherwise, kind of looking at some future events. Just looking at some of the UFC Fight Night Augusto versus Jairzinho lines. I'm liking Augusto Sakai at plus 110 right now. I like Walt Harris at plus 130. I like Ilir Latifi plus 170. Walt Harris is taking on Marcin Tybura, and then Ilir Latifi is taking on Tanner Boser. That's kind of it for that fight night for the amount, because some of the odds aren't really out yet, so can't really go over a lot of them. But those are the fights I like for that night. Going on to UFC 263, just looking at some lines right now. Nate Diaz is plus 350 right now. I would not mind sprinkling a little on there. Just who knows, man. Nate Diaz is unpredictable, and now that it's in Arizona, I mean, the commission there ain't gonna stop it like they did in New York in his last fight against Jorge Masvidal. So I would sprinkle a little on Nate Diaz. I like him at plus 350. Even Marvin Vettori plus 225. I kind of like that too. Seeing how Izzy had a lot of trouble with the takedowns in his last fight with Jan Blachowicz. If Marvin Vettori can do that, man, oh man, that would be an interesting matchup. I'm gonna watch that fight and maybe go over that on Friday. Rewatch the first fight and give my insight and maybe give a early prediction. Brandon Moreno versus Davison Figueiredo. I'm gonna go with Figueiredo minus 250. It's okay odds. Paul Craiglow is at plus 240 against Jamal Hill. I like that. Drew Dober minus 125 against Brad Riddell. Eric Anders minus 152 against Darren Stewart. I think that's what we're gonna go with so far. Otherwise, yeah, that makes this the 5th episode of the MVP Picks podcast. We got a quiet week of MMA, but a lot to talk about, I'm sure, in the next coming days. Follow me on my Instagram and Twitter at MVPPix19. And yeah, I'll see you guys on Friday. Cheers.